Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by Short & Associates, legal recruiters in Louisiana and Texas. And by Orange Theory Fitness, delivering fitness results for a healthier world.
From Commander's Palace Restaurant in the Garden District in New Orleans, we're out to lunch with Peter Raschuti. Peter Raschuti is Tulane University's A.B. Freeman School of Business professor and director of the award-winning Birkenroad Reports. It's business, New Orleans style.
Hi, I'm Peter Raschuti. Welcome to Out to Lunch. If you own a car in Louisiana, there's a good chance you're driving around with a license plate that says Sportsman's Paradise. Even aside from the obvious sexist implication, there are a number of ironies about this state-sanctioned slogan. First, despite the exemplary records of the Saints and the LSU Tigers and the national profile of the Pelicans, the sports the slogan is referring to are not football or basketball, they're hunting and fishing. Another irony is that we're so good at hunting here that at one point we killed nearly every alligator in the state. Because of that, in 1987, the state of Louisiana embarked on a rescue mission. They came up with a scheme for reestablishing the alligator population through regulating alligator ranching. Those regulations are still in place today. They stipulate that all alligators in the state have to be raised in approved ranches. When gators reach 4 feet in length, 10% of them have to be released into the wild. As a result of this program, the current statewide alligator population is estimated to be 3 million. So there's the final irony. The self-proclaimed paradise for hunting is actually the home of one of the most successful animal conservation campaigns anywhere in the world ever. The most unique of the 35 approved alligator ranches in Louisiana is in Covington. It's called Instigator Ranch. Besides raising 2,000 alligators, Instigator Ranch is the only gator ranch in the state that is open to tourists. They get about 25 to 30,000 tourists a year. John Price started the ranch that grew into Instigator with his first alligators in 1989. John, welcomed Out to Lunch.
Well, it's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Maybe you've been doing the math over the last couple of minutes. If they release 10% of the alligators on 35 ranches and they've turned into 3 million wild alligators, what happens to the other 90%, which would be somewhere around 30 million alligators? Apart from the gators who entertain tourists on John's ranch, the rest of the millions of them become meat and hides. Some of those hides become belts. Crescent Belt Manufacturers has been making belts since 1926. Bob Friedrich bought the business in 1995 after he retired from a career in the military where he was a colonel in the prestigious 101st Airborne Division. Today, Bob ships alligator belts and a wide range of other belts too, including rattlesnake, bison, and ostrich all over the country from his factory in Slidell. Bob, welcomed Out to Lunch.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
John, let's start with the most obvious questions. One, why are you the only gator ranch in Louisiana that's thought to diversify into tourism? And two, what do you think is the overriding reason that nobody else in the gator ranching business wants to fool with tourists?
Well, a couple of reasons for that. One is that alligators, believe it or not, are very sensitive animals. They're affected by people visiting them, especially in a non-scheduled situation. So what we've figured through the years is that we're able to time the visits to the alligators, and then they expect us to come. And not only that, we're feeding the alligators. The customers, the visitors are feeding the alligators, and so they're expecting food, and that gives them a little positive reinforcement for doing something that they wouldn't naturally want to do, which is generally be around people. Alligators are not aggressive, but they certainly would tend to go the other direction when they saw people out in the wild.
They like people and they're sensitive. That is such a media breakthrough. I've never heard that said. That is. Hey, what's the thing I've heard, but I've never quite confirmed? If you raise them in a hot temperature, they become one gender, and if cool temperature, the other gender. Is that right?
Well, more or less, yes. If you incubate the eggs at 92 degrees, you're going to get about nearly 100% males. If you incubate those same eggs at 86 degrees, you're going to get nearly 100% females. But the ranchers have figured out that if you incubate the eggs at 89 degrees, you're not only, of course, going to get a mixture of males and females, but you're going to produce a healthier alligator that's going to grow faster. And science has proven possibly even faster throughout its whole life, not just on the ranch until it's released.
Why does nobody else have a tourist gator farm? It's everybody seems to just be sticking with raising the alligators. Is it something you like about it particularly, or is it just good diversification?
It is good diversification. I decided years ago, back in the late 90s, that I had to either get bigger, substantially bigger, or diversify, and I chose diversification. We now raise alligators just like all the other ranchers do and perform our business just like they do. We just happen to do it with an audience. The others, they don't do it because it's a whole nother job. It's a whole nother business. They either didn't want to do it for that reason, or possibly, and most likely, they didn't want to do it because they were concerned for the quality of the alligator skin when you have people surprising them all the time. And like I said earlier, we figured out a way to not have people surprise them. To have
Speaking
them
of surprise, do you do birthday parties and things like that?
We sure do.
Do they come, or do you bring the gators to the party?
We do both. We can bring alligators to your house and play with them in your backyard if you like.
We're doing this next. This is going to be great. Now, Bob, when you got out of the military, you were young enough to start up a second career. Over the past 25 years, you've turned crescent belt manufacturers into a very successful business. When you started out, did you find that the responsibilities that came with being a colonel in the military were transferable to the belt business, or was the transition not so simple and you had to learn everything new from the ground up?
Some of it was transferable, but business in the business world and Army business are significantly different. You know, when you get in the business world, you've got, okay, dollar sign. When you get in when you're in the Army, you get handshake, and there's a significant difference in that. I may have been a slow learner, but you know, we're doing great and work with people like John to make belts for him to sell, and we sell right now all over the country.
So I've been able to catch this together. You at the facility, you sell money clips and wallets and things like that. Some of them are actually produced by Bob.
That's exactly right.
This is really working
right
out.
Right now, a majority of our belts are being produced by Bob.
Bob, when you took over, it was an existing business. What were the first couple of things you changed?
First couple of things I changed were some of the belts that we were making. The company was only making alligator, lizard, shark, and calf. That's all the belts they were making.
And you're up to how many different?
20. So
Wow.
The latest edition is zebra. But you know, I looked at that, and then a year after I was in business, I realized that we needed to have better equipment, because every belt tip we cut, buckle in, tip in, made no difference. We did with a handheld die and a mallet.
That's old school.
That's old school. But given that as it was, Charlie's business had a good reputation. So I brought in a hydraulic machine so we could punch the tip ends and the buckle ends together. At that point, we had to move because we could not put that machine where we were. So we moved to the St. Bernard Port facility. It made a significant difference in our business and taught me a lot. You know, I can make those belts with a 6-inch tip. I can make belts with a 7-inch tip. I can make belts tapered to 1 inch, tapered to 3/4.
Can you make them quicker?
Oh God, yes. Yeah, we make them a lot quicker. It's significantly different to put the belt into the Bebo and set it up and just push buttons to can't use a hydraulic without 2 buttons. And set the belt up, as opposed to trying to line up a belt with a handheld die and whack it with a old-time mallet. Okay. By the way, we still have all those dies around. We still have the mallet around, and occasionally we still do it because we have a request for a different type belt.
I thought you were just playing for a power outage or something like that.
Yeah.
You can keep going. Besides selling to John, where is your market? Are you selling mainly to individuals or department stores? How does it work?
We sell primarily to custom clothiers, men's stores, buckle makers. We're working right now to see if we can expand into a major retailer. And then we're going to, from that point, we're going to go more into the golf industry, because we do belts of many, many colors. You'd be surprised what colors you can put on these
This
skins.
one is, you called it cognac?
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, it's called peanut, it's called cognac. I decided I like to have an after dinner drink, so I picked up the name cognac.
Yeah. Now, when you get these companies on board, do you sell it as like that? If that department store is an example, do you sell it as a white label? Does their name go on it, or does your name stay on it?
Most of the time, their name goes on it. We must have 50 different private labels that we do. I would love to have Crescent Belt on the back of all the belts. Can't really do that. John's is private labeled because it's his company that's selling the belt. I sell to John, so from a business standpoint, it's no different. But John gets the reality to say, hey, this is my belt. It comes out of my alligator. Here's my logo.
There's one issue that keeps coming up when I talk to people that, hunt alligators and such, is they seem to have to send them far away to be tanned. Is that true?
Well, there's not a lot of tanneries in the world, but there are some actually nearby. One of the biggest tanneries, possibly the biggest tannery in the United States, is in Louisiana. Oh. So that's not very far away.
Whereabouts is it?
It's in Lafayette. It's known as Reptile Tannery of Louisiana. There's a couple of others, one in Georgia, American Tanning is in Georgia, and there's one in Florida. Those are the only 3 that I'm familiar with that are good quality.
There used to be a lot more of them, though, right? Is that what I've heard?
Before my time.
Oh, before your time. Okay, that makes sense. You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Peter Raschuti. I'm talking with John Price from Instigator Alligator Ranch and Bob Friedrich from Crescent Belt Manufacturers. We'll be right back after this very brief break. You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Peter Raschuti. I'm talking with John Price from Instigator Alligator Ranch and Bob Friedrich from Crescent Belt Manufacturers. We're talking about the conservation end of it, and I think the thing that got me researching for the show was that without you, 92% of all alligators either don't make it out of the egg stage, or something happens to them when they're quite little. So you're increasing those percentages pretty dramatically.
Yeah, it's an amazing program. That's the basis for which the ranching industry began, was that not only was the population low and something needed to be done about it, but through scientific studies, the Wildlife and Fisheries determined that the population of alligators wasn't surviving at a young age. Basically, they were being born and eaten. In some cases, they weren't being born, just the eggs were eaten. So the end result was only 6 to 8% of the eggs laid in the marsh were growing to become a 4-foot alligator. So the Wildlife and Fisheries said, well, maybe we can come up with a plan to solve this problem. And their plan was to go out in the marsh and get all the eggs. Attempt to leave none of them for Mother Nature. Now, we can't do that. We're not that perfect. But we attempt to pick up all the eggs out of the marsh, bring them into our ranches, incubate them, hatch them, then raise them to an average size of 4 feet.
And by then, they can kind of take care of themselves.
There's nothing going to eat a 4-footer and come back for a second helping. Even a bear, if a bear takes on a 4-footer.
Weird conversation to have in Commander's Palace, but this is good.
If a bear takes on a 4-footer, he may win. But he probably ain't never going to do that again.
And it is incredibly regulated, right? I mean, what I've always heard is that you need a tag to take a gator, and the tag is a function of how much swamp you own. Is that roughly right?
Yeah, that's a slightly different program, actually. The wild alligator hunting program, like they do on swamp people, you do need tags. You need a lease from a private landowner, or you need to own the property. And then you get authorized by the Wildlife and Fisheries to take a certain number of alligators off of the property. In the ranching program, it's very similar. You need a lease from a private landowner, or you need to own the property. You give that lease or description of the property to the Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries. They determine how many alligator eggs should be on that property, and they authorize you to take those eggs. If you find that there's a lot more eggs, back in the old days, in the early mid-'80s and '90s, we would find that there were more eggs out there than they authorized us to take. Well, we could only take what they authorized. But we could report that we found more. They'd resurvey the property and allow us to go back and get them next year. So we're basically allowed to remove the eggs from the property, because we're going to have an 85% survival rate to 4 feet, whereas in the wild, as I mentioned, 6 to 8%. It's a no-brainer.
And Bob, you coming out of the military, you made this acquisition of a pretty successful company that you were going to make better, but not in too long a period of time, you had to buy some new equipment. Was that kind of scary? I mean, putting out new expenditure?
No. Well, expenditures, yes, but one thing the military taught me is that you can always get better equipment. I brought in the 2nd Battalion of Bradley Fighting Vehicles. Significant difference in where the Army was before and after the Bradley. So getting a new piece of equipment to me made sense,
and not as difficult as acquiring a tank. I mean, this makes a lot of sense.
No, back just before I retired, an M1 tank was $2.1 million, I believe, but compared to my equipment, it was very little. And there's an excellent guy that runs machinery, Randall Machinery, in Texas, and he's easy to work with. Comes in and stuff. And right after the clicker, or the Bebo, we then got a splitter to help us split the leather hides. So we took all the fur off of them and made the thickness that they should be. I found 2 Fortunas, which are a different type machine, a rotating blade, in a closet. And I said, we have to do better than this. When I first bought the business, the way to cut strips for alligator was to slide the machine over, put it on boxes, take boards from the box to another box they go into, and run the leather through it. And I went, there's got to be something different we can do with this. So we got the splitter, we got the Bebo to take care of the ends of the belts. And then when we had the Fortunas, we just had to put them into different use. I mean, my shop right now has one Fortuna that bevels on a liner, one that splits it down for the buckle in, 2 that work on alligator or lizard or anything else and trim the edges down. So we've spaced the work around as opposed to having to change equipment, to change what we're doing on a different piece of equipment. And then the most unique piece of equipment that I got, that I purchased, was a cutter. I want you to imagine a 5-foot paper cutter. Okay. And I was told when I bought it by John Katz, it's a good friend, that it was brand new. Well, this thing has a huge cast base. And we're bringing a cast base in. I looked at it and it said 1879. I said, John, this isn't new. He said, yes, it is. They don't make them anymore.
It's the newest. Yeah. Now, this is sort of the elephant in the room for both of you, Bob and John, but not too long ago, California tried to pass a law that I guess no alligator products could come into the state. What do you think? Is this a trend, or is this just kind of a one-off? Or
I guess that's yet to be seen. I think it's a one-off. I think it's people that have not done scientific studies like the Wildlife and Fisheries, and who have not analyzed the situation, but have a gut feeling that animals should be left alone. And I think that's just absolutely incorrect. We've proven that in the case of the American alligator, man's involvement in nature is better than man's non-involvement in nature. We've proven that by having the population, as you mentioned that it was low. When this industry started in roughly '86, the population of alligators was 500,000. We were returning 17% in order to get that population up. The population began to grow, and in 10 years after we started, the population had grown to 2 million.
And what does into the wild mean? What would I see John just carrying him over the shoulder and putting him in a bayou somewhere?
Yeah.
I like the visual.
I use the term wild, but it is the wetlands of Louisiana, the marshlands, swamplands. We catch the alligators, we tape their mouths, make it safe to deal with the alligator because his mouth is taped shut, and we hand that alligator to the Wildlife and Fisheries. They check its sex, they check its length, they put a tag on each rear foot so that that alligator will have a unique number, and we have to return at least 50% females. We can return 100% females, but we have to return at least 50%. So we return these alligators to the wild in a sack. We take them in sacks, put them in pile them up in the boat, take them out into the marsh, and let them, or wetlands, and let them go from the sack into the water.
You know, I'm not going to go to the next place logically, which is how you tell the difference between a boy and a girl. Alligator. I'm just going to move right on to something else. There's
one. If I can interrupt, the California program, I believe, has been pushed back 3 months, mostly through the work of Louisiana and Christy Plott at American Tanning. And as John says, if they'll pay attention to science, as opposed to what I think on Sunday morning, we can probably get that removed. But from my standpoint, I have customers in California. We don't know what we're going to do. We know we have another 90 days, but beyond that, I don't know. I know of a very, very talented manufacturer out there who's planning on moving out of the state because he can't do anything.
Wonder if it's like guns where people will stock up on alligator pelts. Wouldn't that be the funniest thing?
I'd go for that.
Yeah,
All right, right, okay. All right, that'll be our first business idea here. You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Peter Raschuti. I'm talking with John Price, owner of Instigator Alligator Ranch in Covington, and Bob Friedrich, owner of Crescent Belt Manufacturers in Slidell. John and Bob, this is the part of the show we call your brother-in-law. You've quit work for the day and you're heading out for dinner when your phone rings and it's your brother-in-law. He usually only calls when he needs to borrow your pressure washer, but this time it's different. This time he has a business proposition for you. John, your brother-in-law says you're sitting on the greatest idea of all time for a reality TV show. He says, think back to the huge success of Duck Dynasty. That swamp drama made the Robertson family a fortune. And you could easily do the same thing at Instigator Ranch. You could call the show Alligator Empire. You wouldn't have to do anything different. You just open up the place to a camera crew and maybe once in a while have a few fake arguments with the staff for a bit of drama. Your brother-in-law is prepared to quit his job and produce Alligator Empire for you for just a reasonable cut of the profits. What do you tell him, John? Is Gator Ranch reality TV show a great idea or what?
Your turn, John.
Yeah. I guess I've been a little disappointed in some of the alligator TV shows because they play off on the lack of intelligence of us locals.
Swamp People is a good example, yeah.
And I feel quite the opposite. I feel like this is very possibly the most successful program of protection for any animal on the planet. And it's not a result of a bunch of idiots going out and shooting alligators.
Shoot them.
It's a result of years, dozens of years of analysis by the Wildlife and Fisheries that's resulted in a plan. And that plan has been implemented. And the population of alligators has grown to 3 million. And I would argue that point because there's another 750,000 on ranches, and those aren't counted in the 3 million. So if for some reason they were all to get out, they'd be 3.75 million.
And that would be a wild city. That would be.
And I will tell you one thing that's happened with me when this swamp people came out. I had to take time to explain to my customers that no, that was not how you did it. You know, it was strictly for television. I mean, no one hunting alligator would stand off at 100 yards and try to shoot an alligator in the head. No one that I know of and I've hunted with would be in a boat and alligators thrashing around and they shoot. You know, you're not going to hit the alligator. The key to fishing an alligator, to me, is an instant kill. You don't want to, I mean, yes, we're going to use it, we're going to make product out of it, we're going to sell the meat, but I don't want to kill any animal, and I'm a hunter otherwise, unless I kill it like that. What I've developed over time is pulling the alligator head up over the gunnel of the boat and put it right in the eye. Eye brain, very short distance, and the animal's dead instantly.
John, what you're describing is actually more of a show that would air on PBS or National Public Radio. And I kind of like that. Now, Bob, your brother-in-law has a great idea, too. Millennials and the generation behind them, Gen Z, like products to come with a narrative, and they like the businesses they patronize to be socially responsible. Your brother-in-law says you could market to these kids by having them follow the lifespan of the alligator that their belt comes from. The customer would adopt an alligator from the beginning of its life when it's hatched on John's ranch. Then they can follow the gator's life online and make small financial contributions to its upkeep. Eventually, they end up getting a belt. Your brother-in-law says millennials and Gen Z will love it, and in a strictly business sense, you're getting paid for a belt before you have to deliver it. What do you tell your brother-in-law? Is this a savvy marketing plan or a really dumb idea?
You know, John, I'd say it's a savvy marketing plan.
We've already got the adoption program going. You can adopt alligators at Instigator Ranch. I don't know if people are going to want to wait 2 years for their belt.
You know, one thing we do...
You'd have to figure out how much weight you were going to put on between there and then.
Yeah. When we're requested to make a one-piece alligator belt, and there are three really good companies that do that. Myself, Trajan out in Wyoming, and a company over in France, or Italy, I'm sorry. But we will take an alligator, and if you order a one-piece belt from me, the tag on that alligator's tail will be imprinted into that belt. So you get a belt, you've got the tag number, and if we really want to make it fancy, and it depends on my customer whether we do or not, we'll clip the end of the tail and send it to them. So they get a presentation of an alligator belt, one piece, the tag imprinted, and a tail.
I have never seen that.
No, I know.
On the other hand, you're the only guy that cuts the gators, is it north-south?
North-south.
As opposed to across the middle there. So.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that. When you're dealing with a full-size alligator, the fibers in the skin run north and south. So when you cut across the skin, you're shortening, you're breaking those fibers, okay? Then you have to have more splices. I have actually seen a size 38 inch and a quarter alligator belt black made by another manufacturer that had 5 splices in it. Okay? I mean, it's why do that? Why not work with the quality of the skin? One challenge that happens, and one of our customers went to the Masters to show alligators and show his sterling buckles and stuff. Because you cut the alligator lengthwise, the fibers in the alligator are stronger than the fibers in a cow.
And a cow.
So when you hang the belt, well, that's what the leather comes
leather,
from.
to regular leather
Yeah.
belt.
When you hang the belt down, the skin may do this, and instead of hanging straight, it'll hang with a little bit of a curve. You've got to be able to explain that to people. Once they understand it, it's great, but if they don't understand it.
Well, I need one last thing from both of you, and that is, if you're approached by a gator, what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to be like with a bear, just run, or be still?
It depends on whether you're faster than the guy next to you. generally speaking, they're not going to chase you, period. So I would back up. But yeah, there's rumors that you should zigzag.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. I'm wasting a lot of time zigzagging.
Yeah, and not only that, but they don't see well straight ahead. They can see straight ahead, but what they typically do when they're feeling threatened is they open their mouth. Well, once they open their mouth, they can't see anything. So that's the best place to be. You don't want to be over there and have them go, oh, there he is. Oh, there he is.
How does it work again where they always say that if his mouth is closed, you could just keep it closed very easily, but just with 2 fingers. And then, but once he opens his mouth, that's where all the jaw power is?
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a wives' tale as well. It is easy to keep an alligator's mouth closed. However, it's not easy to keep his head still. So when he starts to shake and you lose grip on the mouth, you better be ready to be gone.
Boy, a lot of myths have been knocked out here. This is what makes a good show, I think. The alligator is an omnipresent symbol of Louisiana. They appear everywhere from T-shirts on Bourbon Street to state-funded worldwide tourism campaigns. Even with all that universal attention, John, you've managed to carve out a unique alligator business. And Bob, you've been smart enough to go into a business making something everybody needs and to keep a local business running continuously for what will soon be 100 years. It's been really great to meet both of you. Thank you both for taking the time to join me today on Out to Lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My guests on Out to Lunch today have been John Price. He's the owner of Instigator Ranch, and Bob Friedrich. He's the owner of Crescent Belt Manufacturers. If you want to know what we look like, you can find photos from this show on itsneworleans.com and on our Out to Lunch social media. These photos were taken today by Jill LaFleur. You can find more of Jill's photos at lafleurphoto.com. Out to Lunch is a production of INO Broadcasting for itsneworleans.com and WWNO 89.9 FM. The producer of our show is Grant Morris, our technical producer is Eric Merle, and our researcher is Maggie Mendel. I'm Peter Raschuti. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to meeting you again next week around the table here at Commander's Palace for more business, New Orleans style, on Out to Lunch.
Out to Lunch is recorded live over lunch at Commander's Palace in New Orleans. Commander's Palace serves lunch Monday to Friday, jazz brunch on Saturday and Sunday with live music, and dinner 7 nights a week. Mitchell Foreman wrote and performs all the music on Out to Lunch. You can hear Mitchell's music anywhere great jazz is sold or streamed, and at mitchellforeman.com. Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by Short & Associates, legal recruiters in Louisiana and Texas. And by Basics Swim and Gym and Basics Underneath Fine Lingerie, the It's New Orleans Happy Hour podcast. And by Orange Theory Fitness, delivering fitness results for a healthier world.